All right, welcome into episode 59 of Happy Medium. I'm finally back with an interview. I've been working on that for a minute now. I've been trying to set some stuff up, but finally have a guest and a time that we were able to work out today. He's a broadcaster in the sports world. He's called games for ESPN Plus, a lot of different networks. Done a lot of really good things, graduate of the prestigious Northwestern University, and most importantly, a fellow Sam. It's the first time I'm having a fellow Sam on Happy Game with me so far. So I will welcome on Sam Reed. Sam, thank you so much for being able to hop on, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'll do anything for someone who shares the greatest name in human history, Sam. So, um, all kidding aside, I appreciate you having me on and trusting whatever I have to say. It's an honor.
Yeah, man, appreciate it. It's a cool name, Sam. A lot of I've been called a lot of other things. I remember when I was young, people thought my name was Max a lot for some reason. I don't know why.
Huh. I can't say I got that, but one thing I did get that definitely you can sympathize with is, oh, do you like green eggs and ham? Ha ha ha.
Yeah, I know a lot of people named, I guess a little fun fact on me, a lot of people named Sam are named Samuel. I'm actually a Samson myself, so I'm
You're a Samson. Wow, you are only the second Samson I've met. Um, I always ask that. I say, "Is your full name Samuel?" I was about to ask you, and I'm glad you brought it up. Samson.
yep, I'm the only Samson that I know. I don't know any other ones. People are always shocked when I tell them that, but jo fun and joking aside, Sam, like I said, thank you so much for being able to come on, man, and we can get started here. So, I like to start off all my interviews and all my guests with a similar hitting question, which is pretty basic, kind of just depending on how much you would want to get into it. But kind of what would you say your first introduction was into sports in general, considering that I'm sure you are a big sports fan and you work in the sports world?
So my first introduction into sports, I mean, it was really from birth. I mean, my I was born in 1997 in the city of Chicago. So my dad tells me, apocryphal or not, that I was on his lap watching Michael Jordan hit that famous game 6 buzzer beater, or not quite a buzzer beater, but the game winning shot in Utah to give the Bulls their sixth and final title. So it really started there. I don't remember it, obviously. I was not even 1 year old at the time, but that is my introduction to sports, which is just to say from day one, it was a huge part of my life. I grew up watching sports, I grew up playing sports, and uniquely, I always grew up admiring the broadcasters. I used to imitate everyone from Hawk Harrelson to Jeff Joniak to Pat Hughes here in Chicago. And I have fond memories of my dad pointing up at the broadcast booth and showing me, where those voices were coming from. But like a lot of young kids in Chicago, I was going to Wrigley Field and the United Center and Soldier Field, and I have some great memories around some of the great Chicago teams that I grew up with. 2005 White Sox, 2006 Bears that almost won the Super Bowl, the D Rose Bulls, and the 3 Stanley Cup championships for the Blackhawks. So Chicago sports fans are a little tortured sometimes. I like to think we're coming out of the rut in some ways, but I had a great childhood around sports and playing quite a bit, although not playing very well. I was never much of an athlete, probably the bottom 5% of all aspiring athletes in my high school.
Yeah, same. I was definitely playing a lot of sports growing up in the Chicagoland area too, but never quite got past the playing days. I was fortunately I'm not height gifted or athletically gifted much either. So, but always a fun time to kind of look back on sport memories and stuff like that. So yeah, that's
It's incredible to look back on. I mean, I loved those days, even though I wasn't, I was never an all-star. I was not a, D1 recruit. I had so much fun, playing baseball Saturday mornings, crack of dawn, getting out, and those are really really great memories for me.
awesome. So then. Kind of transitioning or continuing forward a little bit from when you were younger, to then kind of like deciding for what you wanted to do in your career and your life. So then what was your kind of first like foray or introduction into like media and broadcasting and that sort of thing for you?
So in a lot of ways, Sam, it really relates to my once aspirations to be a good athlete because I very early came to the realization that I had no future playing sports. I mean, the second you had to make teams to keep playing, I was getting cut. I have literally never made a team I've tried out for. I got cut from all the middle school basketball teams and baseball teams. So it was very early on in high school when I was in my mother's bathroom bawling my eyes out because I had been cut from the eighth grade basketball team that she said something to me that changed my life, which was, you know what, Sam? None of those boys that made the team are going to be NBA players, and neither are you. But you can be a superstar in what I know you love more than anything, which is this media thing. Because at the time I had started writing, I had a blog called The Sports Brief, playing on my last name, which I have continued to do in my career. It's a blessing. I had started writing. I had started doing thinking about doing little broadcasting things because I knew I always had this goal to be a broadcaster. And she said, why don't you just try to be a pro in that? And I'm like, yeah, damn straight. I'm going to do that. So I went the next morning to HPTV, Highland Park Television, which was the student run TV station at my high school. And I went to the media advisor, a gentleman by the name of Tom Vogelsang. We called him Mr. V, and he still to this day is a dear friend and mentor of mine because he also changed my life in that he said yes when I went to him and said, "Hi, I'm Sam. I want to start a sports show." And Mr. V looked at me and said, "Yeah, that sounds great. I think we had something like that decades ago, but no one's done that. I'm a huge sports fan. Let's do it." And it only took about a week for me to be sitting at the anchor desk of HPTV, listing off the scores of all the sports. It was rough. I was not good. I was wearing like a baggy t-shirt and I looked like a mess and the show was awful. I mean, it was just me literally listing off scores. There was nothing creative about it, but I was doing a thing. I was broadcasting sports and it felt like a drug. I was so happy. And I was like, yeah, this is my thing. I can get good at this. And by senior year, the show was good. I mean, we were doing a 3 minute long full show with highlights and interviews and feature stories. We won awards. And I'm not someone who believes awards are the basis, it should be the basis of proving your worth. But it was great gratification to turn it into an award winning show. And I was hooked. So I started doing play by play by my junior year. And then I realized I could keep doing it in college. So I went to Northwestern, as you mentioned, which has a great journalism, broadcasting, radio, TV program where I kept doing a lot of the same stuff in Big Ten sports and learning more and more and more and doing internships. And next thing you know, I was able to do it as a pro. And that's where I am today, 10 years, almost 10 full years removed from graduation, which is absolutely crazy. But that really was the start, was crying in my mom's bathroom and having her make me realize that why try to play in the NBA when you can broadcast in the NBA?
Nice, nice, awesome. Yeah, I got cut from a lot of teams too, so I definitely kind of feel that at least.
You know the deal.
Yeah,
Not fun when it happens, but you can learn a lot from it.
yeah, yeah, for sure. So, I kind of want to go on what or touch back on what you were touching on a little bit with your college experience. So, obviously, you went to Northwestern, like you and I both mentioned earlier. Um, so, kind of going back a little bit, I guess, do you remember kind of like what you were kind of experiencing or feeling when you found out that you got into Northwestern? Because I know it's very like prestigious, and, they don't accept like anyone there. So,
They don't, and I was nervous. I mean, as a lot of high schoolers are when they're applying to colleges, I had applied early decision, so I really had put a lot of my eggs into the Northwestern basket, and I was just relieved. I think I had built up so much anxiety because you're going through it with everyone. I had friends both in my high school and around the country who I knew who were applying to Northwestern, and friends who were waiting from other schools. There's just like the college thing, and getting into a college can be such a anxiety inducing experience for high schoolers. So I think when I found out I was in and I knew I was going to college and I was going to the one I really wanted, I was just relieved. It's like, all right, done. I can like breathe now. I know I'm going to college and it's Northwestern. And as I got that initial relief out of the way of just like, thank God, it really set in like, oh my God, I'm going to Northwestern University. Like, this is a great school. This is a great opportunity for me to go to Medill, which is a great journalism school, and to cover Big Ten sports. And that was a blessing to me. So I would say for me, it was relief, followed up by this feeling of like, whoa, okay, I got a cool opportunity in front of me. Let's not screw it up, brief.
So, kind of during your time there, was there like a game or like a moment or like anything you were kind of able to do broadcasting wise that like you really enjoyed, like I guess like one more so than another? And then kind of going off that, when you graduated and finished up from Northwestern, what was your kind of career like in terms of like first steps out of there?
Mm-hmm. So starting with my experience at Northwestern, I instead of giving one game, I'm going to kind of generalize to a couple of games, which were the bowl games for the football team. My junior and senior year, it was the Music City Bowl. My junior year down in Nashville, which was Northwestern against Kentucky, and then the Holiday Bowl in San Diego. My senior year was Northwestern against Utah. I got the opportunity to broadcast both of those games, and the setup that we had during my time at WNUR Sports, which is the Northwestern student radio station, which regrettably they don't have the same exact setup for football now. A lot of things have changed with Northwestern football, famously over the last few years. Um, but when I was there, we were able to travel with the team for all road games, and that included bowl games. And when I say travel with the team, I don't just mean buy a flight on United and go stay in Nashville and then show up with a credential and call the game. I mean, be treated like a student athlete. You're on the roster, you are on the team bus, or in this case of Nashville and San Diego, on the team plane. You're in the hotel, you are at breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You're on the bus to the stadium, you're interviewing Pat Fitzgerald on the field before the game. I am so grateful for that and thankful to Fitz and to Paul Kennedy, who was the head of communications at the time for Northwestern, and the entire athletics department for making that happen. Because you obviously, as a young broadcaster, you learn a lot by doing the game. Physically talking on air and doing the play-by-play is valuable, but learning how to act and just how to be on the road with a Big Ten football team, going to a big postseason game, like that's when you feel like a pro. And that to me was the first taste of doing it as a pro. And I got it as a 20-year-old college kid. Crazy. So it was nice that those games were great. Northwestern won both games. That was awesome. But it was really the travel experience and being treated like a pro that was the best part for me. So that leads me into the second part of your question, which was my career, which is that I felt ready for a career as the voice of a team because I knew what it felt like a little bit. Because we, as the collective radio station, were the voice of the football team and the women's basketball team and the baseball team. Those three programs we were a flagship station for. So I knew I wanted to be the voice of a team. I knew that the easiest route into doing this was baseball. Just a few reasons, like logistically, there's a ton of baseball jobs, right? There's only a handful of football, a little more basketball, but like hundreds of baseball teams around the country at the amateur and minor league levels. And timing wise, I knew I was going to be graduating a little early in March, and I could start with the baseball team for the season in April or May. I sent out all these emails, and I heard back very early on from the Chicago Dogs, which fortunately for me, is one of the only teams I applied to that was within driving distance of where I'm born. And that was a real blessing to me. And I give a huge thank you still to this day to Trish Zuro and to Sean Hunter, the management at the Chicago Dogs, for giving me a chance. And they ended up hiring me. And what I tell a lot of young people in college now is to use that as an example. Like I sent out probably 115 emails, heard back from maybe 10 teams, seven of whom said no, or like we already have someone, three of whom sounded kind of interested, two of them led to interviews, two of them led to job offers, and one of them led to a job. That's all I needed. That's one for 115. Horrible batting average, but it didn't matter because I got the job. So if you can kind of shed that fear of rejection, which I was able to do, and this is not to say I'm immune from rejection. I hate rejection. It's human nature. When someone tells me they don't want me for a job or for something, it stinks. It sucks. And it's not easy to hear no, but I pretty easily was able to get the attitude of like, all right, on to the next one. And the next one in that case was the Chicago Dogs, which was my first job. And I was so grateful, and still to this day, I'm very grateful that I was able to work there for 5 amazing seasons, which really gave me a good launching pad for the rest of my career.
Nice, nice. Yeah, I know I don't know what see, I'm trying to think. I had Charlie Tilson on who played for the White
Yeah.
Sox. I had him on here with me. I think it was like early or like mid January. So
Uh,
it was like 11 months ago, but still it was cool to have a guy who used to play for the Sox and the Dogs on here.
so I'd like to tell you something about Charlie Tilson. And I told Charlie this the second the Dogs traded for him, which was that Charlie Tilson was actually the first ever athlete that I covered in media. When I was a sophomore in high school, I did kind of the same thing. I sent like a million emails out to different newspapers and magazines around the Chicagoland area and pretty much said, I would like an internship with you. I want to write. And only one editor got back to me and gave me a little chance. And that was a guy by the name of John Borneman at the Pioneer Press. Gave a pen to a 15-year-old and said, yeah, you can be our intern. And the first story I want you to do is about this guy named Charlie Tilson, who's playing for the Peoria Chiefs. And he went to New Trier High School, and it was a local tie. So why don't you go do a feature story on him? And the only problem was I was 15. I only had my permit. I couldn't drive to Peoria to go cover this guy. So my dad drove me, and you can't do anything without family support. And I have the most loving parents in the world. My dad took the whole weekend and made a whole trip of it down to Peoria with me. We went to the Chiefs. I interviewed Charlie Tilson, and I wrote a feature story on him. And that was the first ever semi-professional thing I ever did. I was 15 years old, and then about let's see, it was maybe 8, 9 years later, the dog signed Charlie Tilson, and I called him up and I said, "Hey, Charlie, remember me?" And he was like, "Nope, not really." And that I gave him a little bit of crap about that, but I had changed a lot, luckily, from the awkward 15-year-old. So Charlie and I had a great time together with the dogs, and he is a great man and now a father.
Yeah, yeah. Awesome. Awesome. So, kind of not necessarily about your time with the Dogs, but I know you've called, games at the professional level for, whether it's basketball or baseball too. You've called games at the collegiate level as well. Would you say that there's kind of differences and maybe like depending on the sport between calling games at the pro level versus at the college level too?
So the act of calling the game is the same. And I'm thinking right now, we're talking on the 15th of December. So I'm in like knee deep basketball mode. And I call college basketball and pro basketball in the G League. So I I might in the same week have a college game on a Tuesday night and then a G League game on a Wednesday night. So the actual act of calling the game is virtually the same. The biggest difference is pace. the NBA game, and G League is a total reflection of this, is very famously lightning fast. So I do not have as much time in a pro game to tell stories and kind of wax poetic about someone's life story. Whereas in college, you have a little more space because the game is a little bit slower. That's the biggest difference to me. But also the storytelling is different. College athletes have different goals. There are different life stages. We're talking a lot about guys' transfers and guys' backgrounds in high school, whereas for the pro game, a lot of it in the G League, especially, is development. We might have a Bulls player who's with us in the Windy City Bulls, and a lot of the storyline about him is what does he need to do to make it full time in the NBA? So it's a lot of that. It's just a difference in pace and a difference in the method of storytelling. But the actual act of doing play by play for a basketball game is pretty much the same, whether you're in pro or college or high school.
So I know you kind of mentioned like how, how when you call games, or if you do like features on players, like you like to kind of tell stories about kind of athletes or people in sports. So for you, what would you say your biggest component is to telling a good story in that regard?
Well, on TV, I think the most important thing about telling a story is knowing the correct length and tone with which you need to tell the story. Because you might have the best story in the world, but if it takes 10 minutes to spit it out, it's not a good story because your audience is going to lose you. And if you don't tell it in the right tone and at the right time of the game, it's not a good story. If you don't, I can't be telling a story, let's say it's a story about how let's say someone had their mother come to a game and surprise them and it meant so much to them. That's like a nice heartwarming story. If I tell that story with 10 seconds left of a 105 game, that's not a good story because all you care about at that point is who's going to win the game, what's going to happen. You don't care about a guy and his mom. But if I tell that in the middle of the second quarter of a 15-point game while the guy's shooting free throws or during a timeout and you're not as intense into the game, that's a good time to tell the story. And if I can spit it out in 15 seconds, even better, because I've just given you a story in a bite-sized chunk where you get the awe and you get the payoff and the memory of the story, but you don't have to sit and wait for me to like set up everything. So I try to think of all of those things because a good story is only as good as the way you tell it and the time at which you tell it. It's just like in life. You don't want me to tell you a good story while you're running down the streets of Chicago trying to make the train. You don't have time to listen to me. But if you're sitting back and chilling on the beach, you have all day. So this is just a kind of long-winded way of saying you got to tell it at the right time and at the right pace.
So maybe a couple more. We'll see how much time we can kind of fit into this with our few minutes left. But what would you say so far in your broadcasting career has been your biggest challenge that you faced so far?
I think my biggest challenge in broadcasting was it's just generally a recurring theme of dealing with uncertainty because this is not a profession in which you ever really have certainty. And it doesn't matter what level I'm at. It can be high school, it can be college, it can be now as an adult. You very often don't know when your next game is going to be or when your next paycheck will be or what your next season will be. Unlike a lot of professions that are more stable and you have a job with a salary and you always know what's coming next and you're maybe climbing the ladder of your company, this is the opposite. This is bouncing around from thing to thing and trusting yourself and trusting that a lucky break might come your way because I'm a believer that you make your own luck, but in order to rise to the top, you sometimes need a lucky break. And there are many very successful broadcasters who have had lucky breaks. And even me as a young person who's experienced little successes early in my career. I've had lucky breaks. Um, so I would say that's the biggest challenge for me is dealing with the uncertainty and dealing with the rejection and finding it within myself to still trust that I will be the best version of myself, not just today, but in 50 years if I want to.
So, kind of, I know I asked something kind of similar to this about your time at Northwestern, but in your kind of like pro career so far, has there been a favorite game you called or a game that really sticks out to you for any reasons?
Let's see. I had a great time. My final season with the Dogs, they really broke through. And for the first time, they made it to the Miles Wolf Cup, which in the American Association is the World Series essentially. And the way in which they did it was just amazing, Sam. The Dogs clinched a berth in the Wolf Cup on a walk-off single up the middle in extra innings against the Milwaukee Milkmen, who were the Dogs' biggest rival. And it was an amazing moment to call. And then the very first game of the Wolf Cup, the Dogs won in 16 innings on a walk-off in the longest game I've ever called. And I would say that 2 game stretch of a walk-off to make the championship and then a 16-inning walk-off to win game 1 of the championship. And for me to be on the mic in that moment and knowing that that was my final season with the Dogs, that was just an amazing memory to have. They didn't end up winning. The Kansas City Monarchs won the championship that year, ironically on a walk-off. So I was on the mic for that. And it was an amazing moment too. I'm a believer that an amazing moment on the mic doesn't have to be for your team. Like I still, in a way, enjoyed calling that walk-off because, I mean, yeah, it wasn't my team. I wish the Dogs had won, obviously. But you get to be on the call for a championship winning walk-off. That's a pretty cool moment. So I would say that whole 1 month stretch of the deep playoff run was a really, really phenomenal experience.
So, kind of one like play-by-play question I kind of developed. So could you just kind of talk about like your role with kind of like balancing, like kind of doing your job with calling the action versus like when you have an analyst who's played the sport that you're covering and kind of like letting them like kind of take over and analyze and break down from their perspective?
That's such a good question. That is such a good question, Sam, because I am a huge believer in that, especially on TV, it is all about the analyst because it's all about the game. And the analyst's job is to tell you, as the viewer, what the heck you're seeing and why you're seeing it. And my job as the play by play person is to set them up for success to do that. So I need to know what my analyst is thinking before the game starts. So I always take the time with my analysts to ask what's on their mind. What do they think of the game? Let's say it's like my game on Wednesday is UIC against Northern Iowa. I know a lot of things about the game because I have been prepping about the game. I know all about the players. I know what UIC is good at and bad at. I know what Northern Iowa is good at and bad at. But I need to sit down with my analyst and just get a few notes. Hey, what do you think about the game? And then let them tell me. Because if they say, oh, I think a really important matchup is how UIC's big men are going to battle the Northern Iowa big men. And I think that battle in the paint is really important. Then I, as the play-by-play guy, know to set them up with that. And if there's a big battle in the paint, a big fight for a rebound, or a big rebounding discrepancy in the stat sheet, I know what they're thinking, and I know to set them up with that. I also want to know what my analysts' leanings are. I have some analysts who are former players and recent former players. I have some who are former coaches, and a coach looks at a game very differently than a recent retired player. So I might ask them different questions. For example, coming into a final play, like a coach, I might ask them more like kind of what you would draw up in this situation. But a player, I might think about how you're dealing with the emotions of this moment and what you're anticipating. So it's really important to know your analyst before you go in. and I'm spending just as much time thinking about what I need to be directing as I am what I want to set up my analyst with, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, that's cool. I know actually kind of on that. Yeah, I know you were talking about that game on Wednesday. I have a couple of friends who went to UIC, and I know we've been talking about going, maybe trying to see a game in the coming week. So hopefully you can call a game that I'm gonna be at soon.
Oh yeah, man. Shoot. So if you are there, please shoot me a text because I'd love to come say hey to you and your buddies. I'll be courtside and happy to, bring you down, show you around. So just shoot me a text if you're there.
Yeah, and I know I know UIC is not my school, but I know my two friends enjoy going to games. I think I don't know if it's on your schedule, but I think tentatively we're thinking about the New Year's Day game for the men's team. So
I'll be there as well. So you just whenever you're around, man, you just let me know. I'll come say hey.
nice, yeah,
Anything for a fellow Sam.
nice. A fellow Sam, but not a fellow Samuel, sadly.
No, no.
Oh, but Sam, thank you so much for being able to come on, man. It was really fun to be able to talk to you and learn more about kind of the nuances of play-by-play and broadcasting in your career and everything. So always enjoy getting to talk to new people on here. So really appreciate
Samson, thank you for having me. Um, Seriously, you ask great questions, and you have a great podcast here, and I'm honored to come on and share a little bit about what I do. And I hope you have a awesome career ahead of you, and I'm always here if you need anything. And I just appreciate the time, man.